We're talking about the case of William Nelson, so let's get right into it. Omaima Nelson was born 1968 in southern Egypt near the Sudan border. Growing up, Omaima's father was very abusive to her, and every time he would drink, he would physically, emotionally, and sexually abuse Omaima and her mother. When Omaima was just 6 years old, she went through female circumcision that her own father performed on her, which was very common in Egypt, but because of this, she was never able to enjoy sex. She just did it to please men. One day, Omaima's mother finally left her husband. She was tired of him abusing her and her daughter. They moved to a small town in Cairo. This town is described to be a very poor town, and it's called the City of the Dead because all of the housing were made around tombstones. In 1986, when Omaima was 18 years old, she met an American oil worker named Roger Stanbrook, who was visiting Egypt for a business trip. Her and this man were dating for a while, and her mom told her that she needs to marry him and move to the U.S. to have a better life. So, taking her mom's advice, that's just what she did. They eventually married in 1986, and they lived in Texas, where Roger was from. When Omaima arrived to Texas, there was a culture shock. She was having a hard time, and her English wasn't too good. And it was hard for her to find work. She felt like an outcast and couldn't relate to anyone. And on top of that, her and Roger divorced just shortly after getting married. That's when she was able to get a job as a housekeeper and a nanny. Then she got into modeling, and that paid the bills for a while. She was always complimented on how pretty she was, and modeling was something that she always wanted to do. But after a while, she got tired of doing that. She started looking for other ways to make money, and that's when she decided to start searching for men to use up. Through modeling is where she would meet a lot of rich old men. They thought she was really pretty, so they would spend a lot of money on her. And that's when Omaima started to accept money from men. She would pretend to be interested in them and date them. She would even move in with some just after knowing them for a few days. By doing this, she was able to pocket a lot of the money. Some of the money she would steal, she would save. So when she left one guy to go on to the next, she would have some money to keep her afloat in the meantime. Sometimes she would take it to the extreme, and she would tie some of these men up, hold them at gunpoint, and rob them. In 1991, when Omaima was 23 years old, she moved from Texas to Orange County, California. Then one night, while playing pool at a bar with some friends, that's where she met 56-year-old William Nelson. He would go by Bill. That's what everyone would usually call him. So that night is when she met Bill Nelson. Bill was born 1935 in Texas. He was a former pilot but was fired for smuggling drugs into the U.S. He spent 4 years in prison for that, but once he got out, he was able to get a good job at a mortgage company. Bill would always brag about how much money he had and how much land he owned. He used to always walk around in these red cowboy boots that he matched with his red Corvette. He was blown away by Omaima's beauty, and he quickly got Omaima's attention because she overheard him bragging about all the money that he has. She was probably like, cha-ching, she felt like she just hit the jackpot. But when Omaima went to go pay her bill at the bar, Bill walks up and he pulls out this big wad of cash and says, "Tonight's on me." After that night, they began dating and got married just after a month of meeting. They had a phone ceremony conducted by an Egyptian priest, then drove to Phoenix, Arizona, where they made it official. For their honeymoon, they stayed at a ranch that him and his brother owned in Texas. Then later, they went to Arkansas to meet Bill's family, where they stayed for about 3 days. At first, Bill's family was put off by Omaima. They didn't like the fact that Omaima was younger than some of his kids. They already figured that she was using him for his money. But somehow, by the end of the trip, they started to come around to Omaima and they started to like her. His family said that they seemed madly in love. Bill and Omaima lived in Bill's apartment in Costa Mesa, California. She said that's when she started to see Bill's true colors. She says that Bill became possessive, rude, and had a temper. She says that's when Bill started to frequently SA her, and that's when she started to see the traits that her father had. On Thanksgiving Day, November 28th, 1991, Omaima said Bill SA'd her and tried to force himself on her. She says that's when he placed his hand on her throat and she thought that he was going to choke her. So that's when she grabbed a lamp and hit him across the head with it, and when that didn't work, she picked up a pair of scissors and stabbed him in the stomach and the chest. There's more reports that says that she reached for a clothing iron and she beat him with it until it broke in her hand. But ultimately, her stabbing him with the scissors is what killed Bill. On December 1st, 1991, Omaima goes over her ex's house, Jose Esquivel. He says she knocks on the door really early in the morning, and he decided not to answer it because he didn't know who it was. He did notice there was a red Corvette sitting outside, so he figured that who's ever knocking on this door came in this red Corvette. Jose says that they came back around 1 p.m. that same day, and that's when he decided to open the door. And when he opened the door, he was surprised that it was Omaima because at this point they had already been broken up for over a year. He's like, what is she doing at my door? He says when he opened the door, she was crying, she looked disheveled, and she looked tired. He noticed a lot of cuts on her hands and neck, but he still invited her inside. And that's when he says that Omaima told him that she was attacked and held captive by her husband. Then she goes on to tell him she accidentally killed him in self-defense. She goes on to tell him that she dismembered him and put him in trash bags. Omaima says to him, if you could meet me at the apartment with a truck and help me dispose of the body, in return, I'll give you $75,000 and 2 motorcycles. He was shocked. He could not believe that she just told him this, but he goes along with it. He tells her, it's okay, I'll help you. Just go to the apartment, stand outside, wait for me while I come with the truck. So that's when Omaima gets back in the red Corvette and goes back to her apartment. After she leaves, he calls the police immediately and he tells them everything that she just told him. So the police go over to the apartment and they see Omaima sitting in the red Corvette. They go up to the car and they ask her what she's doing, and she's like, oh, I'm just hanging out. So they ask her where is her husband, and she tells them that he's on a business trip. So as the police is talking to her, they notice this suitcase in the car. They ask her, can they look inside? And when they go to open up this suitcase, they find a pair of human lungs inside of the suitcase. Omaima tells the police that the lungs are not her husband's lungs, but they're the lungs of a person her husband killed, and she was just disposing it for him. After hearing this, they immediately arrest her and take her into questioning. While that's happening, they get a warrant to search the apartment. Now, here's a trigger warning because it's about to get real graphic. When the police get inside of the apartment, they find suitcases lined with plastic bags with more body parts inside of it. When they go inside of the bedroom, they find a huge blood stain on the bed, a broken lamp, an iron containing blood, human tissue, and hair. Both bedposts were broken and they found blood on the carpet. When they get inside of the bathroom, they find Bill's limbs hanging from coat hangers. And Bill's torso was still bleeding out and it was skinned. There were pieces of Bill's body all over the kitchen. His body was mixed in with Thanksgiving food as if she was trying to make a Thanksgiving meal out of his body. She fried both of his hands in oil. She deep fried his head, wrapped it up in foil, and put it inside of the freezer. She said she put his head in the freezer so she could break out his teeth easily. They found pieces of Bill's hip in the trash with other pieces of turkey and cranberry sauce mixed with it. While interviewing the neighbors said they heard the garbage disposal going on and off all day, but they didn't think anything of it. They just thought that maybe they had plumbing issues, but they just didn't know Omaima was inside putting as much as she could of Bill's body down the garbage disposal, trying to get rid of just anything that she could of him. Around 140 pounds of Bill's body is missing. They found rope marks around Bill's ankles, and that could explain the broken bedposts that they found. They think that maybe she tied him up to the bed and that's how they broke. Let's get to the interrogation room. So while they were questioning Omaima, they noticed her story kept changing. She would ramble on a lot, and she would speak about Bill sometimes in the past tense and in the present tense. She says that demons were telling her what to do. She says that she blacks out sometimes and can't remember anything. She says she doesn't remember killing Bill. She says that she woke up and found him in trash bags. She says 2 women covered in blood told her Bill had to die. She says an Egyptian spirit got into her head and had taken over her body. She says she cut him up because if his body parts were scattered, then his soul could not pass over and he would not flourish in the afterlife. A medical examiner was surprised on how clean the cuts were on Bill's body. They said there were no rough lines or jagged edges. The cuts were very clean and purposeful, as if they've been done before. As for the scratches on Omaima's body, hers seemed clean and not like someone scratched her. They assumed that the scratches on her was from the knife that she used to butcher Bill. But only one thing stayed consistent, and that was that Bill attempted to SA her, and she unalived him due to self-defense. She says that Bill was pimping her out to old creeps in exchange for rent, money, and in one case, a car. On December 1st, 1992, the trial began. The argument in court was, did she commit the crime consciously and intentionally, or if she was not in the right state of mind and was having some sort of a psychotic break. Her defense team stated they believe that she was being SA'd by Bill, but in the heat of the moment, with him reminding her of her father, she snapped because she got memories of when she was being abused by her father when she was a little girl. Her defense team is saying that when she hit him over the head with the lamp and stabbed him and hit him with the iron is when she went into a dissociative trance for 3 days. And when she came to, she realized what she'd done and it was too late. So that's when she went over to her ex's house to ask for help. During this dissociative state is where they believe Omaima cut off his genitals, his head, both of his hands, and put them in a deep fryer. Then removed all of his limbs from his torso and hung him up in the bathroom by a clothesline. Then took the rest of his body, around 140 pounds, and mixed it in with Thanksgiving food. It's unclear whether or not she ate it, but she did admit in one of her psychology sessions to cooking Bill's ribs in the oven and putting barbecue sauce on them, saying, quote, "I did his ribs just like in a restaurant. It's so sweet, it's so delicious. I like mine tender." Omaima's defense team was trying to make her seem like this young, beautiful woman who had a terrible history with men and a rough upbringing. She went from being abused to being the abuser. Now, the prosecutors, the ones who are trying to put her in jail, are saying although she had a very traumatic upbringing and suffers from some sort of PTSD, that does not make murdering, dismembering, and eating someone completely just. They're saying there's no evidence to prove that Bill was abusing her. They're saying that since Bill and Omaima only knew each other for 5 weeks and married 2, that if the abuse was as frequent as Omaima says it was, then she would have marks on her body like bruises and scratches, but she has nothing besides the ones that they found on her, which they think are from the knife that she used to unalive Bill. They're saying there's no 911 calls, police reports, or witness statements, and that the only witness statements they could find was the ones from Bill's family, saying that they seemed very much in love. Prosecutors are saying if no one saw anything, then nothing happened. And here is where I'm giving my opinion. Most abuse happens behind closed doors, so that means that mostly no one is going to see it because it happens behind closed doors. They just don't abuse right out in the open. So just because no one saw anything doesn't mean that Omaima wasn't really getting abused. But at the same time, just like the prosecutors were saying, even if Bill was abusing her, that doesn't mean that she can unalive him, dismember him, eat him, and put him down the garbage disposal. That's not even self-defense anymore. Prosecutors also said Omaima seemed very numb to all of her actions against men, including Bill. They said that she has shown no empathy for any man due to her stealing money from them and pretending to be in love with them, all for her financial gain. They're saying that she has shown no remorse. Now let's get into Omaima's long criminal history because she has a long criminal record. Before she even met Bill, she had 2 counts of auto theft, shoplifting, hit and run with property damage, battery for hitting a security officer, a DUI in 1990, and assault with a firearm in November of 1990. One time, she was stopped by 2 female security guards. That's when Omaima snapped and nearly bit the breast off of one woman. That is wild. How do you even bite the breast off? Almost. Then after that is when she went for the other woman's crotch, and that was when she was able to get away for a while in the meantime until she was caught again. Now let's get into the courtroom. When Omaima took the stand, she said the reason why she even did all this is because of the trauma she endured while a kid. She said that she loved Bill and felt that he was different. That's why she married him. She felt like they were soulmates. She said Bill showed her kindness, respect, and loves her. But not until a week into the relationship is when she saw his true colors and realized she married her father and was now in her mother's position and scared to leave him. She told the court, "I am no monster," and that she would not have done it if she was in the correct mind state. She said she just wanted him to stop, but things got out of hand and she never meant to unalive him. She said she cooked him to conceal his identity. She thought that if she cut off his head and his hands that he would have no fingerprints and no one would be able to link the rest of his body back to her. So she thought this whole thing out. She says that she cut off his genitals as revenge because that's what he would use to hurt her. After hearing her explanation, the jury did acquit her of the first-degree murder charge, meaning that she wasn't guilty of it. But they did say that cooking someone, cutting up their body, putting them in the garbage disposal, and deep fryer is not considered self-defense. Bill's family was in the courtroom, and Omaima said to them, "I'm sorry I dismembered his body. I crossed the reality line. I saw blood and I freaked out. I'm not here to justify what I did. I was just temporarily insane." On January 12th, 1993, Omaima Nelson was convicted of second-degree murder for William Nelson, and a jury sentenced her to 28 years to life in prison. She's serving her sentence at California Institution for Women. She was eligible for parole in 2006, but was denied because of reasons the court gave, which was while she was in prison, she was a big troublemaker. She had violations for fighting inmates, battering a staffer, hiding contraband, stealing, arguing, and, quote, not being in compliance with grooming standards. I'm guessing she wasn't taking showers. The court also took into consideration all of the facts of the case, her criminal history and lack of remorse and responsibility. She wasn't doing her rehabilitation and she was showing no self-improvement while being incarcerated. There's reports saying that she's still manipulating men and taking their money. I can't find all of the facts on this, but they are saying that men still come to the prison. I'm not sure if you're in prison that you can meet up with other people in prison. I don't know how that works, or these could be fans, but they are still giving her their money, and specifically older men. In 2011, she was eligible for parole again, but when she applied, she was denied due to making men fall in love with her just for her financial gain. Now get this, Omaima said that she fell in love while she was in prison with a 70-year-old disabled man who was also in prison, and they were together until he died. And somehow she was able to convince this man to make her the sole beneficiary to all his money. All of this man's money went to her, and it's still going to her. This man's family is mad, as they should be. They get nothing. And I'm wondering if it's some kind of way that they could take this to court due to Omaima's history. I don't know, I'm not sure, but they should look into that. But Omaima is still in prison till this day, and she is eligible for parole again in 2026. I guess we'll see when that day comes, if she gets out or not, but she needs to stay in there. We don't need her out here creating any more mess. Keep all that over there in jail. But let me know what you think about this case down in the comments so we can talk about it. And if you haven't already and want to see more videos like this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in my next one.